Good morning, and welcome to the Budget, Finance, and Audit Committee meeting for the Housing Opportunities Commission of November 3rd, 2023. I'm Commissioner Jeff Merkowitz. To my left is Commissioner Fran Kelleher, and with us via Zoom is Commissioner Rick Nelson, who normally chairs this meeting, but is at home today, so I will be taking the reins. The first order of business today is to approve the minutes from the prior committee meeting of September 20th. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
I move that we approve the minutes of September 20th, 2023.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The minutes are approved. Thank you. Next up, we have our calendar year 2024 portfolio budgets. I will hand it over to President Chelsea Andrews to tee this up.
Thank you. Thank you, commissioners. Thank you, members of the public, and to the HOC team. This first matter before the committee involves review and approval of our recommendation to put forward our calendar year 2024 portfolio budgets. I'm going to turn it over to our finance team led by Tim Getzinger and Terry Fowler, our budget officer, to provide more details.
Thank you, President Andrews. Thank you, commissioners. This morning we have two budget items before us. The first is, of course, the calendar year budgets. There are 20 properties divided into 18 different budgets. The second item will be the county operating budget for FY25. Terry Fowler, our budget officer, will be presenting both items. Terry?
Good morning. Thank you, President Andrews and Tim. Good morning to the commissioners, viewing public, and staff. Historically, the commission approved calendar year budgets for our low-income housing tax credit partnerships only. Now, the Lindley and the Laureate are operated on a calendar year basis as well, and therefore are included in this packet for approval of the calendar 2024 portfolio budgets. If we move to page 13 of our packet, there are 16 calendar year low-income housing tax credit partnerships that own 18 properties. The limited partner for Wheaton Metro donated the property back to HOC, and therefore that is not included in our calendar 24 budgets. We will present a fiscal year 24 budget amendment to incorporate that property into our agency fiscal year budget. If we move to page 14 of our packet, it's worth noting that the cash flow for this portfolio is restricted to the properties. However, HOC is responsible for covering any loss for stabilized properties. We are anticipating a small loss at Lasco Manor. However, that deficit is smaller than prior years due to moving 50% of the staff cost related to the resident services provided at the property to our county grant. The anticipated net cash flow for calendar 24 of the tax credit properties is $10.1 million. While this includes budgeted cash flow for the properties also in transition, we must point out that some of that cash flow is resulting from the properties not bearing a full year of debt for calendar 24. The Leggett is projected to have 5 months of debt, Georgian Court and Shady Grove 3 months of debt, and the 3 Willow Manor properties are not projecting debt payments paid by operations during calendar 24. If we were to exclude these properties, the projected cash flow would be $2.42 million. The budgets assume rent increases ranging from the old county executive voluntary rent guideline of 1.4% to the most recent guideline of 5.8%. The properties tied to the operating cost adjustment factor have used varying rates depending on their last approved OCAP increases. And they also range from the 1.4% to 5.8% and then are reflected by property on the chart. The agency receives partnership management fees for the portfolio, and we are projecting approximately $189,000, which is an increase of 20% or 32% from that projected for calendar 24. All the properties are budgeted to have adequate cash flow to generate enough funds to pay both the asset manager or investor service fee to the limited partner and partnership management fees to HOC with the exception of Lasco Manor. Finally, on page 21 of your packet, this depicts the capital budgets. A capital analysis was completed to determine if the properties can support the full budget. And with the exception of Forest Oak, there are sufficient reserves at the property. As we've done over the last several years, we have increased the annual contribution to the replacement reserve by $70,000 for Forest Oak Towers to meet their capital needs. And I'd be happy to address any questions you have related to this item.
Are there any questions from the committee? If there are none, I will entertain a motion to support the staff's recommendation to send this to the full board.
I move.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
The motion is approved. Thank you.
Thank
Next up, we have the presentation of the fiscal year 25 county operating budget. Director Andrews.
Thank you. This matter comes before the committee. It's a standing matter related to our request to the county for support in regards to various aspects of our work, but most importantly, our resident services division. And I will turn it over to our finance team. You'll see that there's not much shift in terms of our request, but ultimately a great deal of appreciation to the county for its support of our resident services division and our work. And so I will turn it over to Terry Fowler and Tim to provide more context.
Thank you again, President Andrews. As you noted, thank you again, President Andrews. As you noted, this is a pro forma item and an annual request from the county. And Terry Fowler, our budget officer, will present this.
Thank you. Yes, for fiscal year 25, the Montgomery County Office of Management and Budget once again had a staggered submission schedule. The dates were very early this year. They were October 13th through the 27th. However, staff did reach out to OMB and request and receive approval to submit our budget on November 16th, following the commission meeting on November 15th. As Tim mentioned, it's very pro forma. The county had a budget kickoff on September 21st. And as has been done in several previous years, we've been asked to submit a baseline budget, which they call the maximum agency request ceiling, or MARC, for fiscal 25 in an amount not to exceed $7,972,501. And this amount is the same as what was approved for fiscal 24 without any adjustments. It provides funding, as you can see on page 22, the majority of which provides funding for our personnel costs and some of our supportive services for resident services. And the majority of the balance supports our properties to offset rising utility and homeowner association fees. We are also reimbursed for the rental license fees that we pay to the county. And we get a small amount to support the cost of operating our Gaithersburg and Silver Spring Customer Service Center. It is worth noting that we will submit a request for the adjustment to the cost of salary and benefits based on those increases. And that will be taken into consideration by the county as they go through their review process. So we are asking for you to forward this to the commission to approve submission at the base MARC and I'd be happy to address any questions you may have.
So moved.
Seconded.
The motion to support the staff's recommendation and send this to the full commission for consideration has been properly moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 The motion is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next on our agenda, we have an item related to our MPDU placement, an alternate MPDU placement proposal. And
Commissioners, I'm noticing that in the conversion of this document to PDF, that the version that would be showing on the screen will miss a couple of areas. So I'm going to ask that we move this item to the end. I'm going to allow our IT team to find the original PowerPoint and ask for some assistance in that regard, please. And so
Sure.
we'll move and ask your indulgence to just start with the property management.
sure. So the next item then, we'll come back to that. And for now, we'll talk about property management procurement.
Thank you, commissioners. As you all know, this has been quite an undertaking in terms of the agency reevaluating and reinvigorating our process related to the selection of third-party property management companies and taking a holistic look at one, ensuring that our properties are managed at the highest caliber possible and that we have accountability infused, as well as ensuring that our scoring module reflects the values of the board. This first tranche of properties that we are bringing to you, you will notice in the materials, we had over 71 responses and proposals for our team to review. And we've tried our best to consolidate the recommendations to you in groupings based on properties where we currently have property management companies in place that we are recommending that we retain, and then going through the properties where we are recommending a difference and a change in leadership or management there. I'm going to ask our Director of Property Management, Ali Ozar, to come to the front and to walk us through, and please feel free as we go through this presentation to pause and ask questions along the way. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Ali Ozair. I'm the Director of Property Management, and I'm here today to present to you our recommendations for property management services at HOC Properties. In August 2023, we issued requests for 22 RFPs from firms to provide property management services at 26 HOC properties. In response, we received 71 proposals from 7 different management firms. The responses were reviewed by team members from asset management, property management, compliance, risk management, executive staff, real estate, and mortgage finance teams. During our reviews, the scoring criteria and the evaluation criteria we utilized was the criteria that were approved during the December 2022 special session. After review of the 71 proposals, staff recommends that Commission authorize the Executive Director to retain the current management companies for 21 out of the 26 at the 21 out of the 26 properties. Those properties are Alexander House, where we are recommending to retain Edgewood, Diamond Square to retain Residential 1, the Lindley to retain Bizzuto, Metro Point to retain Bizzuto, Metropolitan to retain Bizzuto, Stratmore Court to retain Bizzuto, Westwood Tower to retain Capri, Cider Mill to retain Grady Management, Georgian Court, McRooters, Montgomery Arms, Green Hills Georgian Court, McRooters, and Montgomery Arms to retain Edgewood, Green Hills to retain Capri, Stewarttown, Arcola Towers, Bauer Park to retain Edgewood, Forest Oaks to retain Habitat America, Waverly House and Avondale to retain Edgewood, and the 3 Willow Manor properties to retain Habitat America. Additionally, currently HOC utilizes 3 different forms of management agreements. The first form being the third-party management company has full responsibility for management of the property, including maintenance, financial and accounting services. The second form being HOC provides the maintenance, while the third-party management company provides rest of the management services. The contract assisted third-party management agreements, HOC provides full maintenance, excluding, and also the third-party management may provide additional services, including financial and accounting services. The request for proposals required all management companies to assume that they would be providing full property management services, including maintenance. This change would impact 5 HOC properties, including Arcola Towers, Avondale Apartment, Bower Park, Magruder's Discovery, and Beverly House, as currently HOC provides the maintenance for these properties. However, we have asked the third-party management companies to provide the maintenance there as well moving forward. The scoring criteria, as I stated earlier, and the evaluation criteria is the approved criteria from the December 2022 special session. It requires each respondent to meet 3 minimum requirements. There's a total of 100 points that can be assigned. 25 are assigned for qualifications and capabilities. 20 points are assigned for their current and past performance. 15 points are assigned for their proposed property plan. 25 points are assigned for the management fees, and 15 for their minority female or disabled participation. The 6 management companies we are advising to retain for these 21 communities include Residential One, Bozzuto, Grady Management, Edgewood, Habitat America, and Capri. The management fees for these 21 properties are currently budgeted at 2.1 million, to be exact, 2,117,745. Assuming 100% occupancy, the new management fees or the proposed management fees are $2,400,552. This would result in a net increase of $282,807 increase in management fees. However, it is important to note that the currently budgeted fees are not assuming 100% occupancy. They're based on the recommendations of the management firms. But the proposed fees are assuming 100% occupancy. So they would be the maximum we would be required to pay. The issues for consideration during this meeting are: does the Budget, Finance, and Audit Committee wish to join staff recommendations to the full commission to award the property management services contracts to the management companies proposed herein? For the budget impact would be for the fiscal properties, the proposed fee will be factored into the 2025 fiscal year budgets. The impact of changes in fees to the fiscal year 2024 budgets will be prorated based on the implementation dates. For the calendar year properties, the impacts of the changes in fees to the calendar year 2024 will be prorated based on the implementation date. Once implementation has occurred, staff will determine if the resulting changes are significant enough to warrant a budget amendment. The timeframe, we're here at the November 3rd meeting, BF&A meeting, for deliberation and formal action at the November 15, 2023 meeting of the commission. The staff recommends that the BF&A committee join this recommendation to the full commission to award the property management services contracts to the management companies proposed herein. That's it. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks. And I think you've answered one of my questions, which was just on the 21 that we're looking at today, and just noting that there was no turnover. But what I'm hearing is, so there are 5 others where there will be, and
you'll hear those subsequently.
Yes.
So we're going through this and then getting your approval to advance. And then the next presentation is going to be property in which we will be recommending a shift. So we'll go through each of those with you here.
okay.
Yeah.
Was it surprising at all that, I mean, we didn't have more turnover, or?
I will say that despite the fact that we received a great deal of proposals, there still needs to be additional work around getting other companies to bid for this work for us.
Mhm.
And so we saw a lot of the same companies, maybe, applying for different properties that they don't currently manage, but still the same companies that we've worked with in the past, advancing proposals to work with us. So we'd like to broaden that scope in this next tranche, do additional outreach, circle back to find out why we did or did not receive responses from some of the other property management companies in the area. We were very prescriptive in our proposal. So for example, requiring the transition to Yardi or the utilization of Yardi. Some feedback I received or heard is that some companies did not want to use Yardi, for example. So there are different reasons why we didn't receive a whole slew of new companies, but I will say that we will continue to do outreach. And one of the key things I want to note, and I know that Commissioner Kroom and many other commissioners, as do we, feel strongly about customer service. So a part of this process includes ensuring that any renewals include the evaluation process of the customer service feedback that we will now be ascertaining over the course of this next year. And so starting fresh, giving everyone an opportunity to understand our requirements, as well as deploying a survey, a customer service survey as well, so that could help inform any renewals or changes that we might propose in the future.
Yeah. And yes, it would obviously be good to expand the pool of applicants. But I'm curious, like even within, the pool of applicants that we have, obviously some are winning in some and others in others. I don't know, is there not more competitiveness? Do we think that there's any, you noted that, we're sort of using a new procurement process, reflecting some values that we discussed. I mean, are we taking a look at, what we've done and making sure like that there isn't any sort of inadvertent bias towards incumbents?
Well, absolutely. And in fact, because of the newness of our team, many of the individuals who are on the panel, have not necessarily worked with these companies on our behalf for any long period of time. So there definitely was a neutral and objective approach in terms of reviewing the proposals. And of course, can defer to Ali if there's any additional information to provide there. There was a lot of proposals to review, and I know that the team did a very thorough job of evaluating each and every proposal that we received. And I don't know if there's any additional context to add, but I will say that where there were some substantial criteria that weren't met or didn't meet our satisfaction, that is where there are recommendations that are being presented to the commission in regards to changes.
Okay.
Oh, Ali.
Criteria 3, which is current and past performance, which does allow us to take into account how the management company has performed at a particular property. So we do have the ability to take that into account. And additionally, we had a very diverse team who reviewed all the proposals. Each RFP was reviewed by 3 team members, each from a different team within HOC. So I think that definitely helped in addressing some of the very concerns that you're discussing.
And that particular item on past performance, are we comfortable that there, that the incumbent doesn't have some sort of built-in advantage in the bid because they have, we see their performance at that? I mean, I imagine it can cut both ways if they're not performing well at that property. But is there anything in there that might be pushing us or pushing up points for the incumbent as opposed to new bidders?
Yeah. So criteria 4, which is a proposed property plan, it kind of addresses the very concern that you're bringing up. And this is where we objectively look at the plan that each of the property management firms has proposed for this individual property we're looking at. And that is reviewed very objectively without really taking into account, however, they may have been performing currently at the property to address some of the very bias that you're talking about.
Okay. Are there additional questions?
I have 2 questions.
I lost the sound.
Thank you. I had forgotten to turn my mic back on. Appreciate that you're mentioning that. For the 21 we're considering, will they all have an implementation date that starts in the near future, assuming they're approved by the commission?
Yes, we're anticipating January 1st. So
Okay.
once it's approved at the November 15 commission meeting, we'll start the process of executing the management agreements.
Okay. And once we have agreements in place, what is HOC's process for oversight of these management companies to make sure that they in fact are delivering all of the services that we are expecting?
We are building out several reporting protocols within property management. I know our asset management team, not speak for John, but I know he's also with his asset management managers, they're putting protocols to review the performance of each individual asset. Quarterly, property management will be looking at the property's monthly performance and having very proactive discussions with our management partners.
We also already have designated staff on in our property management division that's responsible for a certain portfolio of oversight related to the third-party property management companies. So that includes that monthly reporting that Ali is referring to. Those individuals are the individuals that receive that information, have an opportunity to ask questions, to follow up, in addition to the new creation of the asset management division that looks at trends and also works with our third-party property management companies and our property management team in terms of that oversight. And now that we're also creating outsourcing more of our maintenance as well, our maintenance division is standing up a process to have oversight over the third-party property management companies as it pertains to their maintenance work orders and the activities that take place in that space as well.
Okay, so we'll know on a quarterly basis if inspections are being done, if critical maintenance is being done within 24 hours, et cetera.
Right, that's provided in our quarterly reports. Yes.
Thank you.
I have a couple questions. Number one, related to, I think, the first question that Commissioner Keller asked. We specifically chose to issue all of these. You talk about having received a large number of responses. Do we think this process is good to have them all expire at the same time and therefore have to go back out on RFPs simultaneously again? How'd that work?
We actually have at least 2 more tranches coming before the board. So we did stagger the entire portfolio. So this is the first group. We will have some subsequent groups that will come in the next few months through this process. So we did look at staggering.
So then having 26 is not a overly burdensome challenge on staff and anyone at one time.
Well, it definitely is a heavy lift. However,
Right.
in
I
terms
agree.
of being able to move through and not have a process where it takes us forever to get through the 55 properties and looking at each of those companies, we definitely had to come up with a balanced approach.
Okay.
Yes.
The other question I have related to the fees. We did institute some few years ago a process of providing some incentives for our managers in terms of occupancy. They got paid, I think they got less if they didn't meet a certain mark, and they might have gotten more if they did. How'd that work out, and is that being carried forward?
Each RFP does list a minimum occupancy requirement for the management fee to be paid out. It ranges between 93 to 95% for each asset. So there is a threshold in terms of occupancy that every manager must meet in order to be paid the management fees.
And if they don't meet it?
Then those fees are adjusted. If they do not meet those occupancy thresholds, they do not get paid the full management fees.
And if they exceed it?
Then I do believe that the fees are capped at the maximum per unit value that they're providing.
Okay. All right. Oh, and then the other question I guess I have is in transferring the maintenance to the management company, which makes sense. What's the impact on our staff and how is that staff going to be deployed?
There's no impact on our staff. We're not reducing our staff. We are just redeploying them. And we'll be having further discussions with the union and with the staff in regards to those next steps, but there will be no negative impact on the staff.
All right, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Oh,
I don't want to jump ahead of you, Jeff. Go ahead and ask for the
no, I
motion.
was just asking if there was any other questions, but if there are no other questions, I will entertain a motion to support the staff's recommendation to send this to the full commission.
So moved.
I second.
All in
I
favor,
second.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The motion is approved. Thank you.
So what we will do, because we've listed them one by one, I'd like to turn it back over to Ali to give the next to go through the next property. Thank you.
The first property we would like to recommend where we'll be changing the management agent or proposing to change the management agent is Bradley Crossing. We issued the RFP number 2411, soliciting responses from management. Sorry, I can.
50.
So on August 23rd, HOC issued a request for proposal, RFP number 2410, soliciting responses from management firms for property management services at Battery Lane. We received two responses, one from Residential 1 and one from Edgewood. After review of the proposals, staff recommends that the commission authorize the executive director to negotiate and execute a contract with Residential 1. The staff reviewed the submissions of the two RFP respondents. Residential 1 received the highest score. Residential 1 received 82.67 and Edgewood received 81.67.
Just for clarification's sake, which one are we talking about, Bradley or?
We're talking about Battery Lane.
Well, that you had mentioned Bradley starting out, I thought so, and then you moved to Battery Lane. So what we have up on the screen is Bradley Crossing.
Yes, I want to let me allow our IT team to also get on the right page. We could take a step back and please turn to page 41 of the packet. Thank you. And then Ali, as you move through, if you could indicate what page you're on for IT, that would help us.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
I'm sorry.
Thanks for getting us on the right page, Rick.
Yeah, I'm using the, sorry,
So then I will assist. The executive summary is on page 43. And this is what you spoke about, Ali. Is there any additional update here?
No. And if we could jump to the summary and recommendations page for Battery Lane, please. Yep.
That would be page 49.
Thank you. The budget impact Residential 1 proposed a fee that equates to 57.51 per unit per month. The maximum value of this contract at 100% occupancy up to 212 units would be approximately 146,305 for 1 year. By comparison to the current fee structure, this decreases the annual fee by 16,158 based on 100% occupancy. The proposed fee will be factored into the fiscal year 2025 budget based on the projected occupancy. The impact of the lower fee to fiscal year 2024 will be prorated based on the implementation date and increase the unrestricted cash flow by the same amount. Timeframe deliberation at the Budget, Finance and Audit Committee on 11/3/2023 today for commission action at the November 15, 2023 meeting. Staff recommends that the Budget, Finance, and Audit Committee recommend to the full commission authorization for the executive director to execute a management contract with Residential One for property management services at Battery Lane. Happy to answer any questions.
Thanks. And yeah, I think, when I originally read this, it was not completely clear that this was a change. But are there any questions? If not, then I will entertain a motion to support the staff's recommendation and send this to the full commission.
So moved.
I second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. The motion is approved.
And Commissioner Merkowitz will update this for the board and indicate who we currently have in place for this particular property to provide that clarification.
It would actually be great to have a chart just like the one for those that are not changing, so we can see right up front that there are some that are changing. I think that is great.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. If we could move to Bradley Crossing, please. Thank you. The executive summary page, please.
Executive summary is on page 52.
On August 23rd, 2023, HOC issued a request for proposal RFP number 2411, soliciting responses from management firms to provide management services for Bradley Crossing. We received 3 proposals from Residential One, Alden Management, and Edgewood Management Services. After review of 3 proposals, staff recommends the commission to authorize the executive director to execute a negotiated executed contract with Residential One. If we could move forward to the scoring summary, please. Next slide, please.
Slide 56 or page 56, please.
Staff reviewed the submissions of the 3 respondents. Residential One received the highest total points with 80.67, followed by Edgewood and Alden Management. Next slide, please. And the next one, please. Issues for consideration. Does the Budget, Finance, and Audit Committee wish to join staff's recommendation to the full commission to award the property management services contract to Residential One at Bradley Crossing? The budget impact: Residential One proposed a fee that equates to 57.51 per unit per month. The maximum value of the contract at 100% occupancy of the 402 units would be approximately $277,428 for 1 year. By comparison to the current year structure, this increases the annual fee by $6,112 based on 100% occupancy. The proposed fee will be factored into the fiscal year 2025 budget based on the projected occupancy. The impact of the higher fee to fiscal year 2024 will be prorated based on the implementation date and reduce the unrestricted cash flow by the same amount. The timeframe deliberation at the Budget, Finance, and Audit Committee meeting on 11/3/2023 for commission action at the November 15, 2023 meeting. Staff recommends that the Budget, Finance, and Audit Committee recommend to the full commission authorization for the executive director to execute a management contract with Residential One for property management services at Bradley Crossing. Thank you.
Are there any questions from the committee? If there are none, I'll accept a motion to support the staff's recommendation.
I move that we accept staff's recommendation and forward it to the full commission for. Yep.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion is carried.
Thank you. Next up, I'll provide the recommendations for Glenmont Westerly and Glenmont Crossing. If we could go to the executive summary, please. Thank you. On August 29, 2023, HOC issued a request for proposal RFP number 2415, soliciting responses from firms for property management services for Glenmont Westerly and Glenmont Crossing. 4 proposals in total were received. from Residential One, Edgewood Management, Capri, and Grady Management. After review of the four proposals, staff recommends that the commission authorize the executive director to negotiate and execute a contract with Residential One. If you could please move to the scoring summary.
Sorry, 1 second. That is on page 65.
Thank you. Staff reviewed their submissions of the four respondents. The Residential One received the highest total points. Excuse me. The Residential One received 74.67 points, which was the highest, followed by Edgewood, Capri, and Grady Management. If we could move to the summary and recommendations, please. Thank you. Issues for consideration. Does the Budget, Finance, and Audit Committee wish to join staff's recommendation to the full commission authorization to award the property management services contract to Residential One at Glenmont Westerly and Glenmont Crossing? The budget impact at Glenmont Crossing, Residential One proposed a fee that equates to 57.51 per unit per month. The maximum value of the contract at 100% occupancy of the 97 units would be approximately $66,942 for 1 year. By comparison to the current fee structure, this increases the annual fee by $18,054 based on 100% occupancy. The proposed fee will be factored into the fiscal year 2025 budget based on the projected occupancy. The impact of the higher fee to the fiscal year 2024 budget will be prorated based on the implementation date and reduce the unrestricted cash flow by the same amount. Glenmont Waverly, Residential proposed a fee that equates to $57.51 per unit per month. The maximum value of the contract at 100% occupancy up to 102 units would be approximately $70,392 for 1 year. By comparison to the current fee structure, this increases the annual fee by $18,984 on 100% occupancy. The proposed fee will be factored into the fiscal year 2025 budget based on the projected occupancy. The impact of the higher fee to fiscal year 2024 will be prorated based on the implementation date and reduce the unrestricted cash flow by the same amount. Next slide, please. Timeframe: deliberation at the Budget, Finance, and Audit Committee meeting on 11/3/2023 for commission action at the November 15, 2023 meeting. Staff recommends that the Budget, Finance, and Audit Committee recommend to the full commission authorization for the executive director to execute a management contract with Residential One for Glenmont Crossing and Glenmont Westerly. Thank you.
If there are no questions, I'll accept a motion to support the staff's recommendation and send this to the full commission.
Well, I do have a question. This is a 37% increase. Was the prior per unit fee relatively low?
The prior management fee was lower. However, it was managed by Alden and their performance has been subpar. So sorry, no, this was previously managed by Edgewood Management, and due to their performance,
they had a lower fee. I guess
yes.
the real question I'm trying to get at, and I bouncing back and forth from one of these, be useful to see some analysis or comparison of what we're paying, what fees we're paying in the different properties. Are they consistent? Is there a big difference? That would be a useful chart for us to see, just to get a sense. So we don't have to go back to each one of the 21 and figure out what we're paying them.
The 21 where we propose to retain the management companies, we do have a chart of that within the PowerPoint.
I was looking for it, but I just couldn't find it. Okay.
Maybe for full
And we can
commission.
provide it in that way
Okay.
for these others as well.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful. Thank you. I'm sorry, I interrupted you getting your motion, Mr. Chair.
That's all right. I skipped over the questions part. So if there are no additional questions, I will accept a motion to support the staff's recommendation to send this to the full commission.
I move that we accept staff's recommendation and forward to the full commission approval of resident one as property manager for Glenmont Westerly and Glenmont Crossing.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The motion is carried.
Yes, we're starting on page 69. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to slide 71, please. Thank you. On August 28, 2023, HOC issued a RFP number 2419, soliciting responses from firms to provide managed property management services for Brookside Glen. 4 proposals were received from Edgewood Management, Residential One, Capri, and Grady Management. After review of the 4 proposals, staff recommends that the commission authorize the executive director to negotiate and execute a contract with Residential One. Slide 70, page 75, please. Thank you. Staff recommends the review the submissions of the 4 RFP respondents. The Residential One received the highest total points with 74.33, followed by Edgewood Management, Capri, and Grady Management. Could move to the summary and recommendations, please. Thank you. Issues for consideration. Does the Budget, Finance, and Audit Committee wish to join the staff's recommendation to the full commission to award the property management services contract to Residential One at Brookside Glen? The budget impact: Residential One proposed a fee that equates to $57.51 per unit per month. The maximum value of the contract at 100% occupancy of the 90 units would be approximately $62,111 for 1 year. By comparison to the current fee structure, this increases the annual fee by $18,911 based on 100% occupancy. The proposed fee will be factored into the fiscal year 2025 budget based on the projected occupancy. The impact of the higher fee to the fiscal year 2024 budget will be prorated based on the implementation date and reduce the restricted cash flow by the same amount. Deliberation at the budget timeframe. The deliberation at the Budget, Finance, and Audit Committee meeting on November 3rd, 2023 for commission action at the November 15, 2023 meeting. Staff recommends that the Budget, Finance, and Audit Committee recommend to the full commission authorization for the executive director to execute a management contract with Residential One for property management services at Brookside Glen. Thank you.
Are there any questions from the committee? If there are none, I will accept a motion to support the staff's recommendation and send this to the full commission.
So moved.
I second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 The motion is approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
We've
you.
made our way through the property management. Thank you, Ali. We'll now go back to the item related to alternative placement, item number 3.
Do we have 2 more properties here? Willow Manor and
Hold on. We're not advancing Hillendale at this time, as well as Willow Manor. I'm not, if you would please,
okay,
we're not advancing those right now.
okay, thank you.
Point of clarification, the Willow Manors were a part of that larger group, that 22 that we retained, and Hillendale, we're not advancing right at this moment.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, committee. I apologize for the blanks in the packet. I think we have up on the screen the complete version of the packet. On slide 2, there is background given for 2 high service luxury senior apartments, rental apartments. in the when there are properties that developments that have associated fees that are basically far too burdensome for someone that would qualify for an MPDU unit, even at the MPDU rent. DHCA has the discretion to enter into alternative placement agreements whereby these units are placed at different properties, but it is at their discretion. And on the for sale side, there's really a simple calculation of 3% of the sales price. So that's, everybody knows what happens when it's a for sale property. But for rental, there is not yet an agreed upon algorithm for producing that amount. Incidentally, that is something that DHCA is actively working on. And in a lot of the discussions we've had on these two are meant to lay some of the foundation for the discussions that are ongoing. And hopefully this will ultimately yield to a single system for rental properties. These two properties, one is near Pike and Rose. The other is at the location of the former 4-H property, somewhat close, a little bit south of the Lindley on Connecticut. And in both cases, these are rental units. They're actually a combination of units. There's independent living, assisted living, and memory care. So it's really the independent living units that typically fall under the MPDU code. Assisted and memory do not fall under the code at all. However, one little note for Corso, apparently there's a definition within the MPD code that if there is a full kitchen, even if it's assisted living, it gets pulled into the calculation. That did happen with Corso, where they provide full kitchens in their assisted living units, which is a little unusual. So that's part of the reason why they have a much larger number. But anyway, in both cases, they have associated service fees that are extremely large. And so the developers for each of these and DHCA and HOC have been working to figure out really an updated and amenable way to do these alternative placements in a way that truly delivers value, that really does a proper valuation of what it means to write down market rate units to MPDU units. I will just note on the next slide, slide 3. One thing to note is that in the unit mixes, you'll see that the on-site MPDU requirement for the Pinnacle is 14, and the on-site required MPDUs for Corso Chevy Chase is 59. If you add those together, you get 73. The reason we're at 84 is because one of the things we negotiated with the developers was, as part of agreeing to do it off-site, to actually have them increase their required amount by 15% each. So we get from 73 to 84 because they're actually going to produce more MPDUs than they would have been required to do on-site. You can see that these are properties that will start construction relatively soon. And I think just the main thing to highlight here is that there's a $4,000 per unit per month service fee for the Pinnacle and a $12,500 per unit per month service fee and that is obviously what's made it incompatible with the MPDU program. But again, this is something that the HCA is actively working on to really get us for senior properties kind of across the spectrum. We can go to the next slide. So the way in which we got to consensus on the valuation for each property, we looked at comparable properties in the same submarket as the development. So in the case of the Pinnacle, we looked at really the apartments that are at Pike and Rose, like the Henry and Per Se, and then there's one other one. And so we took the market rate rents from those properties, and then took the difference between the market rate rents and the MPDUs to get the sort of loss in revenue that would come from writing those units down. And then what we did with that is we applied what HOC, we basically took HOC's current financing terms. So for instance, looking at the current interest rates, current term amortization, things like that, debt service coverage. We basically looked at if we were going to build a hypothetical building that had where we took the units, how much really debt proceeds would we lose because we are losing that revenue from these units. So it really is a good reflection of exactly what a like-kind replacement would be in terms of the impact on HOC's ability to finance those, that hypothetical building. And a little bit further on, we'll get into some of the, the range and flexibility that we've acquired with this, but just to sort of walk you through it, each one, just in case me rambling through it there wasn't super effective. So you can kind of see the annual loss just on revenue on the Pinnacle is 126,000. The annual loss just in terms of rental revenue is 475,000 on Corso Chevy Chase. And then effectively what we did is we said, based on, how much less in the way of debt proceeds would we be able to raise as a result. So what the Pinnacle value is we would be able to raise 2 million less in senior debt. So that would be 2 million in cash the commission would have to come up with to basically gap finance the deal because of those units being written down. And in the case of Corso Chevy Chase, that number is 7.5. But of course, instead of us writing that check, that's what the developers need to do. So it was a really good constructive conversation. I think everybody was pretty reasonable around all of this. And I would just again highlight the achievements here that we're getting market rate rent data from really very new product in the same submarket. And we're getting 15% more units. And so, this is and so the sort of per unit subsidy here is around $113,000, which is fairly consistent with, if you think about it from what's the usual HIF loan on a HIF soft loan on a new affordable deal. And it's usually, somewhere between 100 and 150, somewhere in there. So we think we've got a good sort of prototypical system. As I said, as we continue discussions around formalizing one official mousetrap, this will, I think, form some of the pieces of that. We can go to the next slide. And then the other, I think the other accomplishment from these discussions are that DHCA in these discussions was open to a range of placements here. So typically in the past, what would happen is that, and it's usually HOC, but typically in the past, what would happen is that HOC would accept this money and then go put it on existing units, existing market rate units, but nonetheless existing units, because if you recall from a few slides before, these transactions start imminently, and the two payments that they make are within that construction period, and so the likelihood that HOC has a new construction project that's on the exact same schedule is very low, particularly in the target submarket. So instead, what usually happens, so for instance, HOC previously did an alternative placement with Toll Brothers, and this was a for sale, but Toll Brothers in downtown Bethesda, these were condos that had condo fees that were too much even for an MPD at the MPD rent, and HOC put them at Pook's Hill Towers. And so the difference in age between Pook's Hill Towers and brand new condos in downtown Bethesda is pretty significant. And so what this flexibility here does is it gives us more runway to be able to get them into potentially get them into new construction units if within a few years HOC happens to have something going on, that it gives it more runway to be able to catch up and place it in fact in brand new units. In the event that that doesn't work, then there is still the opportunity to place them at existing units two things that were also added to this this range of flexibility are that one, part of that issue around the dislocation and timing, which is, you know, they're starting construction, they're making payments, and if we put them in a new building of ours and it doesn't happen for years down the road, then there's this gap of years where those MPDUs aren't being provided. And so what we worked out to sort of how do we bridge that in a way that still meets mission, and that is to in fact invest that money while we're waiting and use the interest from that money to create a rent supplement program, which DHCA felt, the executive felt that was a good way to once again solve this issue that had been a real problem in the past of the timing not matching up. But lastly, in the event that it is, you know, we do put these in existing market rate units of HOCs, the county executive's top priority is family size units. And so within the existing units, he wanted to see these actually converted to 3-bedroom units at 40% AMI. So what basically the calculations that you saw on the previous page are based on a unit mix at the senior properties of 1 and 2 bedrooms that creates a valuation. And we basically converted that valuation into 30% units, or sorry, 3-bedroom units at 40% AMI. So it's taking that 9.5 million and converting it to what it would look like with the same information, taking market rate 3-bedroom data from the same properties, the difference between the MPDU rent, writing it down to 40 instead of the 40% AMI instead of the MPDU rents. And that yields a number for each property of how many 3-bedrooms would be provided at 40% AMI in downtown Bethesda. And that seemed consistent with, the commission has often been very interested in seeing 3-bedroom family size units in downtown Bethesda at these lower AMIs. So it was a good discussion with the HCA. There's a lot of flexibility here for the commission to ultimately decide where it wants to place these units. And so, we're really pleased with how this has worked out. So final slide. So we would just ask that you join our recommendation to approve the acceptance of these 2 payments for the Pinnacle and Corso Chevy Chase, and the provision of these corresponding MPDUs at HOC properties. I'm happy to take questions.
And before we do that, I just want to be clear in terms of next steps. So at this stage, we're before BFNA requesting your support as it pertains to receiving the $9.5 million. A lot of the allocation in terms of how we utilize those funds will come back to DevFin and ultimately to the board for recommendation and determination on how best to deploy. But the agreement would be crafted in a way that allows HOC to have the flexibility. So at this stage, we're looking for support to tell the county, yes, we will accept the 9.5 million. Thank you for incorporating these flexibilities. And then ultimately it's up to HOC and the board to determine the policy determination around how best to deploy the funds.
Great, thank you. I wanted to also make sure that that was clear. And so today we're just considering the recommendation to accept the placement agreement. At a later date, we will figure out how to use those. And I mean, first off, I want to, congratulate you on this. It seems like a very good outcome in terms of, if developers are not going to be able to create those MPDUs themselves, that it's not just a 1-for-1, but that, that we're getting some additional MPDUs out of it. And also for, finding some kind of solution to some of those timing issues and being able to use that interest, right, to write down or subsidize some rents in the meantime. And I guess, I don't have any questions at the moment, just a comment. And again, I know we will discuss utilization of the unit of the MPDUs at a different time. I hope at that time, it will also be additive to whatever we would be doing otherwise. So if our standard is 30% minimum, in terms of affordable units, that this would be in addition to that 30%.
Yep, understood.
I have a question regarding the subsidies that we would provide between now or between receipt of the funds and when we deploy them in a building. Would those subsidies go away at the point that we then build the MPDUs? And what happens to the folks who were getting the benefit of those subsidies?
Yeah, so I think sort of the formal response to that question is that's something that we still need to work out with. I still need to work out with some of my colleagues in in HRD and resident services and finance and things like that. But we do have some thoughts because we had already been thinking about some other ideas around HOC's provision of rental subsidies. And so as an example, we think that there's a good opportunity to provide kind of soft, sort of smaller shallow subsidies that aren't designed to be permanent subsidies. That we definitely have a number of clients that only need a little bit of support for a little bit of time to make things work, and as opposed to providing it as if it were a voucher that people may rely on for a long period of time. So I think one of the things that we would additionally return to the commission with, and I think probably come through ARC, is to bring forward a more formal idea about how we could do this. But what we felt like was having gone through COVID, having seen some of the rental assistance programs that came out of that, also through some of the analysis of our wait lists, seeing that for some families it's not a deep subsidy that's needed for a long period of time. It's a shallower subsidy that's needed for a shorter period of time, but the same groups are competing for the same voucher. That we think there's also potentially some tactical ways to use it around that. But we would certainly bring that forward as well for you all to determine what that program looks like.
Thank you.
And we anticipate coming back, as we mentioned, for those policy considerations in regards to how we approach the funding. Yeah.
I do have question, comment. I'm not clear in terms of all the changes you made between the draft that we had earlier and this proposal. But I guess I need to say congratulations to the staff. And I say that sincerely because 10 years ago, I was actively involved in all the discussions surrounding alternative location. And I really believe, and one area where we had the most difficulty, I think, was in terms of rental properties, because nobody could figure out how, in fact, you can make that calculation to figure out what could be gotten from the developer to, in fact, develop those units and to develop more units, because there was a lot of discussion about increasing the number of units. So I absolutely give kudos to you guys, and I'm sure that it was you guys who put this whole proposal before them, because nobody could figure it out at the HCA before. And I think that it is consistent with the objectives of the legislation and the 2 years of discussion that we had between the industry and DHCA and everybody on this whole issue of MPDUs. So I think it's a major step forward. In terms of the accepting this and putting aside the policy, I'm a little uncomfortable there, only in the sense that I'll support this, but my support really is based on following through with the policy and principles that you explained here. I don't think that HOC should, whoever is at HOC, whenever that decision is made, should decide to go off in some completely different direction. I'm supporting it because I think it's consistent with the legislative intent at the time this proposal or this effort was crafted by the council and the executive branch 10 years ago. So I really urge us to look at the underlying principles that you've laid out here, which is you're getting more units, you're allowing the flexibility for 3-bedroom units. You're going to another planning area, but it's also not a planning area that is overloaded with affordable housing units, which again, those were all major issues that were discussed during that 2-year period. And I can't remember whether you were sitting in some of those meetings or not, Zach, but it was an interesting time, very difficult. So I do say, I think it's good. And I think your explanation was very cogent and answered the questions that I had.
Thank you.
If there are no additional questions, I will accept a motion to support the staff's recommendation and to send this to the full commission.
I have one comment and then I'll make the motion. This begs the question of how we and or the county or someone figures out how low and moderate income people can afford the service fees for assisted living and the other forms of healthcare being provided by these folks. I mean, that really is a juggernaut that is going to be tough to crack given the funding of Medicare and Medicaid and their difficult relationship with service providers for these services. But that's another day, another issue. I will move that the Budget Committee forward to the full committee with our recommendation that we accept the funds for these alternative placements and work with other committees to implement the kinds of solutions that you described for both the interim lease subsidies and the long-term placement.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 The motion is carried.
Thank you, commissioners.
I believe that was the last item on our open meeting agenda.
Yes.
If there are no additional items, we will move into a closed meeting, and I will read the following statement. Pursuant to Section 3-305B and D of the General Provisions Article of the Annotated Code of Maryland, I move to adopt the written closing statement dated November 3, 2023, and to adjourn this open session to a closed session to discuss the confidential commercial and financial information related to accepting a temporary expansion to a line of credit from PNC Bank. Section 4-335 of the Maryland Public Information Act prevents disclosure of confidential commercial or financial information obtained from third parties. This meeting must be closed in order to protect confidential commercial and financial information provided to HOC from PNC Bank in connection with its provision of a temporary increase in a line of credit. The statutory exception that allows this topic to be discussed in closed session is Section 3-305B13. If a member of the public that is watching this meeting in real time on YouTube wishes to object to the closed meeting, please comment in the YouTube chat box or contact HOC's General Counsel. Instructions can be found in the Open Meetings Act objection procedures, which is posted on HOC's website. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. This open meeting is adjourned and we will move into closed session.
Thank you.
Thank you.